Over the past 3 years, mental health, well-being, and employee experience have emerged as top priorities for organizations in the Middle East and globally. While many programs have been established as a response to the pandemic, the focus will now be on employers to close the skill gap through fostering a culture of workplace well-being, employee engagement. In this session, leading L&D and HR leaders will discuss how to develop a collaborative wellness culture that drives employee value and purpose, shift mindset to develop awareness of employees' needs, objectives, and challenges. Last but not least is how to apply practical tools that drive employee engagement and retain top talent. With me today, my esteemed colleagues, Nader Bachini, Regional Director, MENA Region of the ROI Institute, Ms. Debbie Chatton, Director of Training and Development, Dubai Airport in the United Arab Emirates, and Joseph Hayes, Vice President, Digital Learning at Demac Properties in the United Arab Emirates. So welcome aboard, and I would like to start with the first question to Mr. Nader. So Nader, what was the major shift in culture and engagement in the last 3 years?
Thanks, Abdulaziz. So there are, let's say, 3 major shifts in the employees' engagement and culture during the last 3 years. The first one was the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on the workplace. So a lot of employees went to work remotely. So there was a challenge in communication and collaboration. So a lot of organizations, they faced this challenge, how to communicate with their team remotely. How can they develop their performance, and also how can they delegate, empower all these teams. So that was challenging, and that's the major shift during the last 3 years, the impact of COVID-19 on the workplace. The second one is the increased focus on the diversity, equity, and inclusion globally in many organizations, especially have in the Middle East, the focus on women employment. For example, in Saudi Arabia, the rate of women employment in the private sector has increased more than 10% during the last 3 years. So there are a lot of women coming to the workplace, a lot of women coming to be managers in those organizations. So empowering those women, integrating those women, making sure that they are engaged in the workplace. So that was also some challenge with in many organizations. And the third one is about the well-being, is about the mental health of the employees. So a lot of organizations are increasing their program for the happiness, we call it, in the workplace. So we have a lot of importance on the work-life balance in many organizations. So those were the 3 major shifts: the effect of the pandemic, the DEI in many organizations, and then the importance of the mental health and the well-being.
Great, and that definitely was transformed to the organization through training. So I'd like to ask Debbie, and how you managed training and how did it evolve after that?
Thanks, Abdulaziz. Yeah, that's a nice introduction from Nader, really, around the landscape of what's changed. And I think all of us would agree on the panel and everyone listening today that all of our organizations have changed dramatically over the last few years, whether that's the size of the organization, the nature of people's jobs has changed significantly. And I think expectations from employees of their organizations has also shifted. So from a training perspective, I think it's inevitable that any L&D profession that's leading a function in an organization has to move with the needs of their employees. And Dubai Airports is no exception there. Some of the things that we have seen over the past few years is, a highly operational business as an airport, the gateway into Dubai, and, the world's busiest airport hub. And with the nature of the type of work that people do, the skills required are very different. How people apply those skills on the job is very different. And in a highly operational environment as well, releasing people from their work environment and decrease in productivity to allow them to train and learn in an ever-changing and evolving landscape is also a challenge. So how we are seeing that evolve over the last few years, technology has definitely helped, and I'm sure we're going to hear from all of us today when we talk about learning technology, and Joe particularly, I'm interested to hear Joe's perspective leading the learning technology space for his organization. But us as well as an airport, you know, thinking about the customer journey through the airport, we have to implement lots of different new technologies so that the touch points are less with human interaction and more using technology. And the same demands of our employees, they're looking for more ways to learn 24/7. They don't necessarily want to come away from their work environment. So implementing technologies that I think give people a very unique learning experience. AI has been, you know, significantly disruptive and continues to be in that space, but also is really helpful to individualize learning. And I think that's what we're seeing is really a huge demand for people to learn in a very unique way that suits their individual needs. So this drive for individuality from a learning perspective is huge. And implementing programs that appeal to individual learning needs has been something we've focused on. We implemented a program actually through the pandemic where we were transforming our guest experience and how we interact with our passengers, our guests through the airport. And we use technology around micro-learning being one of them, but other technologies that would really make the learning simple, unique for the user, but also transferable into the workplace and lasting. And to the point where the leader of this particular business area said to us, you know, for once, there's some science behind what you guys do in learning. And he said there is never a way back now for him when he wants to see programs implemented in his business. He said there's no way we will go back to how we used to train traditionally. So we're all excited, I think, in the industry to see it evolve and change over the coming years and months ahead of us.
Wow, it seems like an awesome journey. And since we talked about technology, I would like to ask Joe about if you can share the learning, the digital learning, how it can be properly utilized to maximize performance and employee engagement.
Shukran, Abdulaziz, and to my fellow peers and panelists for your great insight so far. It's a pleasure to speak to you from sunny Dubai today. So when it comes down to digital, and specifically you asked utilization and engagement, for me, utilization really comes down to having the right tech. Like, will it be used? Maybe a better question to ask is it worth using? And engagement, conversely, comes down to having the right people in L&D to maximize that technology, create the right messages and hype even by the right targeted campaigns. So if we break those down a little bit further, add a bit more flesh to the topics. Utilization, for utilization, you've got to have some skin in the game. So it never fails to surprise me when companies, not only that I've worked for, but friends that work for companies, and they say their learning and development lags behind. But when you scrape just beneath the surface, you realize that not a lot has been done, or not enough has been done to give digital learning specifically the right chance to fight to make an impact on the organization. And for some context to that point, think about this. 30 years ago, over 30 years ago now, we had the first LMS, your learning management systems. And then some years later, you had SCORM technology, these cartoons and voiceovers, they were born too. And that was great for reactive formal learning, like your IT sec, code of conduct, maybe some HR or compliance modules. But it stayed that way for a really, really long time. Sure, you had the dawn of these premium content providers, your Udemy's, Udacity's, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning. They continue to give access to world-class content, but premium content alone, it's just not enough to create learning success or a learning organization because it lacks a lot of personalization. I think the corporate world was late to recognize this rise of people learning from people, peer-to-peer based content. And when you think by mid-2000s, 2006, YouTube were pumping out over 100 million videos today, when from a corporate perspective, many organizations were still pushing these archaic, mandatory, and often kind of dull content. And about 6-7 years ago, we welcomed the dawn of this LXP, as dubbed by Josh Bersin, your learning experience platforms. This is like a AI-powered booster shot to your traditional LMS. significantly improve like employee-centric user experience and user interface. These platforms are magnificent, and you can get them from so many vendors these days. Your Cornerstone on Demands and Edcast, Degreed, Percipios, et cetera, et cetera. They all allow for like much better personalization and for the digital learning stack to be aligned under one user interface. And it can take feed from any other part or any other technology, I should say, within the organization itself. And additionally, accepting the popularity of this peer-to-peer and content creator culture, some, not all, LXPs actually allow SMEs to be granted space on the platform to go live, vlog their experiences, host an AMA and ask me anything, and actually connect with people within the business. And for the data heads, the people that are really data-centric, and any L&D leaders, the information we provide to the C-suite, to our boards, it's been really static for a long time. How many learning hours per person, per department? What's the gender split? What's the department split? But LXPs actually offer like much, much better business intelligence that's more akin to like SEO. You can know so much more deeper data about how people are learning, what's their habits, what time of day, night, or weekend, and on what platform. So is it mobile? Is it static? Is it on the go? Is it actually linked to something like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, like we're connecting on today? And just in the last couple of years, as rightly mentioned by Debbie, we've had this explosion of AI-powered tech and tools that still need refinement for utilization perspective. Your Grammarly's, human pal video creators, AI voiceovers, not to mention the metaverse, Menti, and the very controversial ChatGPT. So that's the first question to ponder. Like, how much skin do you have in the game? And with so many companies like still using outdated LMS platforms, how far behind are you? That's the tech side. And do you have the right people, conversely, to actually utilize that tech? So traditional L&D is far from gone. In actual fact, classroom training for soft skills development, leadership development, and sales enablement is needed now more than ever. But purely from a digital perspective, you need fewer instructional designers, and you need far more content curators and creators. For example, I worked for eAnt, one of the largest telecommunications and tech conglomerates in this region for just over 4 years. And I'd often meet with our senior technical teams, and they'd have requests like, my people need training and certification on the likes of Cisco, ICND 1 or 2, or fiber optic training. And I think 10, 15 years ago, I would have been scratching my head and saying, where am I going to get this content? Is it for vendor? How do I write this? Is it affordable? And now it's so different. There's so much amazing premium content that the art form is in curation. It's in choosing the right blend of classroom, digital, free and premium experiences to really meet that requirement. And finally, engagement means inclusivity. Does your L&D strategy cater for the entire business equally, or just like your FTEs and senior management teams? So I think L&D really needs to embrace all the needs of their employees by deploying the right tech and the right people to suit the right learning styles. So in summary, like, do you have the right tech? Do you have the right people to maximize it? And who's your learning strategy really aimed towards, and the budget? Is it inclusive?
Great. I don't like to talk about budget because we're going through budget cuts. I like to keep it positive and build more towards engagement. So with that, I would like to ask Nader again. So what was major challenges for you to keep your employees engaged?
Yeah, that's a good question, Abdulaziz. So I'd like to start with what Joe was saying about embracing the new learning technology in the organization. And one of the major challenges is that if the organization are not implementing the new learning technology, so there will be here some challenging in meeting the need of the learners. So the limited growth opportunity in the organization, that's considered to be one of the most important challenge. If the employees, they don't have a clear career path, if they don't have the learning that the method of learning that suits their need, also the content, what Debbie was saying, the micro learning, so all this new learning technology that is requested by the workforce. So the limited growth opportunity with not having a clear career path, with also not having a structured succession planning program within the organization, not having enough training, that considered to be one of the challenges. So the employees are leaving because they are not getting the skills that they must have for reskilling and upskilling. And the second one is about the communication. So employees leaves because there are some silos. If we talk about here the horizontal communication within different departments. So a lot of a company, they are implementing, for example, my company, we do a lot of team building activity for, enhancing the communication between the different departments of the organization. And also we talk about the vertical communication, so the communication between the different level of the organization. So a lot of employees, they leave because of the poor communication. So the lack of communication can create a disengagement. Also, the third reason or the third challenge here is about the poor work-life balance. So employees needs time for themselves, needs time to exercise, needs time to socialize. So here we need as organization to adapt in terms of work schedule, flexible work schedule, providing the employees enough time for themselves, giving them some days for remote working. So that will help also to overcome this challenge of creating the balance work and life. And the fourth reason is we're talking about the budget. So this is related to the budget, about recognition and reward. So many organizations need to have in place a system for recognition and for reward in order to keep their workforce engaged. So the lack of reward system, this reward system should be integrated with the performance management system within the organization. If we miss that part, so we are not going to take full advantage of our performance system in the organization. So here we talk about the limited growth opportunity. We talk about the challenge of communication, the work-life balance, and also the lack of recognition. So these are the four common challenges that they face in the organization in order to engage their workforce.
I totally agree with you, and that says a lot about changing the mindset and changing the culture, and it has to do a lot with L&D,
yes,
as I faced myself. And with that, I would like to ask Debbie, how did digital learning support your learning strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think Joe said quite a lot already around the learning landscape, but I think if I pick up on the concept of a program, a blend of particular methods are important, and it's about choosing the right technology that suits the user's needs, be that components of the LXP, be that components of a micro-learning, be that technology that you use within a classroom face-to-face environment to ensure that it's as engaging as it could be. I think it's about making the right decisions that meet the business need. And I think the example that I gave earlier, the guest experience program, if I just go back to that, and some stats that we discovered, and it was the first time we'd implemented the micro-learning across our business for a particular unit. It was a high stakes project, highly visible, and it was strategic in nature. So it was on our CEO's top 3 priorities. So there was some risk associated with it, but also some trust in us as a function that we were the experts and we knew what we was talking about. We had the senior leader buy-in, so I think that's critical. The second piece is about the adoption and the engagement of the technology. And what we found through the micro-learning was a lot of learning, for sure. First time we launched it with our participants in the organization, they would take the app, and partly down to the designers who were putting the content together, they opened the whole program end to end. And so those of us that are really familiar with the way that it's designed, you can quickly whiz through a module in probably 10 minutes if you wanted to take all the quizzes, and it's complete, right? Tick in the box, and people go, okay, I've done the learning. I can move on to something more interesting in my day. Yet what we were discovering is, of course, because it's AI enabled, there'd be a push in a couple of weeks and it'd go, hey, Abdulaziz, do you remember when you're with a customer in this particular situation, what's step 4 of the 5 principles, let's say? And they'd go, yeah. They failed to respond to the question because the retention was significantly lower because they sped through the module. So we were learning as a learning function as well to say, okay, we have to space the learning. That's the whole point of bite-sized learning, right? That you have it in spaces, that it's done on the go, that it's done in small bite sizes, and therefore the retention will increase. And what we were seeing when individuals were completing the program, when we designed it in such a way that it was completely open, the retention was very low. And what we saw when we shifted and we closed particular components within the module, the retention went up to 80%. So what does that tell us? That we're never going to have to retrain these people again on the same particular processes or skills that we were giving them through the microlearning, because they have it and the retention is there. What we know from our design is we needed to re-engineer the way we were designing that program so that it met our customers' needs, the business. So I think we're learning also as a profession with the technologies as they come in, and they're moving so fast. Sometimes I think it's also a bit about trial and error, and which ones do you try and which ones do you not try. You know, for example, the metaverse, we're not there yet, and we're not ready to go there yet, because I don't think we're going to be the ones that will lead going into the metaverse. We might be a follower, whereas with other technology, we might want to lead. So it's also about which ones do you want to be seen as, you know, really pushing because they meet your business drivers and needs and they're right for your particular business, and which ones are higher risk, or you want others to try and test it, prove the concept before you start to make those investments. So I think it's in every L&D function's strategic plan. If it's not, it certainly should be the digital transformation.
So let's check with another L&D leader, with Joe. So in that case, what are the main lessons learned from the technology, and how to build employee engagement from your end?
That's a really good question too. So I honestly think if life and work experience over the last 5 years particularly has taught us anything, and when you consider the slowdown of the tech market, particularly last year, engagement isn't all PlayStation 5s and beanbags and foosball tables in the office. And it doesn't have to be complex either. In actual fact, it's far more human than that. And I recently listened to a Burson, I'm mentioning Burson again, I swear I'm not on any commission, but I listened to a very useful Burson podcast that talked about the essence of building engagement. And Josh's team summarized thousands of employee engagement surveys and concluded that engagement doesn't just come down to money or your relationship with your manager, although they are factors, of course, but it's 5 basics that the team summarized. One was trust. Do I trust who I work for and who I work with on a daily basis? The second was belonging. Do I fit in? Basically, is my demographic recognized? Is it appreciated? Growth was the third. Can I grow here? And of course, L&D is intrinsically linked to that question. Number 4 was fit to work. So are my skills being properly and correctly utilized? And I often find there's not enough internal mobility or partnership between L&D and talent acquisition to really drive that question, or to really get into the detail of that question in terms of fit for work. Do we have people working in the right departments? And 5th and finally was, does the company that I work for stand for something meaningful in the world besides from profits? So beyond profit, beyond the day-to-day, is there a genuine vision and mission to try to make the world a better place? And as I said, L&D can be linked to almost every point there. Engagement itself is also a very self-evident word. So L&D teams must continue to fight and push from the periphery or just the outside, having L&D for the sake of having L&D versus having it at the core of the organization, unearthing the questions about how can we drive business performance, how can we drive engagement for people, and to continue to be where the action is. And if you don't know where your L&D team stands right now in terms of driving engagement, questions that I ask often, like the acid test, and questions that you can use to find out where your team is in terms of learning. One, back to the first question, do you have the right tech and the right people to use that tech? Number 2, does L&D partner again with talent acquisition to drive this internal mobility? Do you have a policy around internal mobility? Number 3, is learning a KPI in your business when it comes to the allocation and rewarding of bonuses? 4, do you have a graduate program that's finding, nurturing, developing the next generation of talent? And 5, is there a culture of leadership development and particularly succession in the organization? And 6, how involved is your executive leadership team? Are they involved, or are they ticking a box? Finally, last point, I would double down on the previous point of inclusivity to drive engagement. Today, as L&D leaders, we have absolutely no excuse not to provide ample access to engaging, excellent, always on and on-demand learning experiences for the entire employee life cycle, from your graduates all the way through to your C-suites, who often need things like executive coaching. So your C-suite has that person to vent upon and to learn from as well. And that even keeps your C-suite engaged too.
Very interesting. Now let's go to the ROI expert and check what are the ROI of engagement, of employee engagement. Nader, I will leave it to you.
All right, thanks, Abdulaziz. So when we talk about the ROI here, we talk about the success of employees' engagement and what the contribution those initiatives, those project and employees' engagement will give to the organization. So the first step in the process of measuring the impact is to start with why. Starting with why means identifying the payoff need for this program. The payoff need, so if we think about any employees engagement program, that could be some opportunity. We'd like to be the greatest place to work. We would like to have the best leaders, to increase our market share, to increase our reputation. So that's an opportunity we'd like to take advantage with this program. Or it could be a problem we need to solve. Our leaders are leaving, our employees are, we have a high level of turnaround, we have a high level of complaint. So we have a lot of conflict within our team. So here we are going to implement an employees engagement program in order to resolve this problem. Or also, so a lot of organizations are having some merge. So we anticipate some problem. That's why we are implementing an employees engagement program. So the first step for measuring the ROI is to identify what is the need, why this program now. So when we ask this question, there are some measures that we're gonna identify. Like, for example, the level of turnover of the employees. If there are some complaint, the employees engagement score. So in the survey that we are having. So all this data are the business measures that we need to start from them in order to measure the impact. So those are the measures that will be changing after the implementation of this program. So the first step is starting with why, making sure that we know why this program, we identify the measures, and we know what needs to be changed in terms of performance in the organization, and also what we need to learn. So that's the point of the learning need analysis part. It comes with the first stage of starting with why. After understanding why we are implementing this program, the next step is to set the objective. So having a clear expectation of the employees engagement program, what could be the reaction of the employees? What could be the learning? So a lot of organizations, I've noticed that they implement some a day when they bring the family of the employees into the workplace and so on. And there is no any measurement of that event. They don't ask the satisfaction of their employees about that event. They don't know what is the learning. I mean, if we don't have this learning objective set, reaction objective set, and also what the application, what need to be changed in terms of performance, and also the consequence on the employees engagement. So that's a kind of the chain of impact. It's the different level of evaluation that can apply to training, and also they can apply to the employees engagement. After identifying the objective, now the step of collecting data. So we need to collect the data just after the program. And those data are related to reaction and to the learning. And also we need to collect data after one month, 2 months after the implementation of the program. Those data are related to the application and also are related to the business impact. So once we collect those data, the next step is to analyze those data. In fact, the reaction data will help us to do some adjustments, same for the learning, the application, and the business impact. But if we reach the business impact level, the challenge here about what is the contribution of our employees engagement program to that results? If we are having a result of reduction of turnover, So how can we say it's because of this program that we have implemented? It may be there are many other reasons, change in the marketplace, other initiative implemented by the organization, and so on. So here we need to do some isolation, isolating the effect of the employees engagement program using different methods like the control group analysis, the trend line analysis, the estimation from management, from the employees themselves. So the isolation helps us to make sure that we identify the net contribution of our program, because when we present this data to senior executive, if we don't isolate, no one will gonna believe that those improvement of the business measure is because of our program. So once we did the isolation, the next step is to convert data to money. So not everything can be converted to money, of course. So some of the measure will be the intangible, like for example, the collaboration, the communication, the happiness. So, but there are some measures that can be converted easily to money, like the time saving, like the employees turnover, like the productivity. So those measures can be easily converted to money with some standard value that exists in the organization. So we need, as a professional in talent development and HR learning and development, we need to show the value of the program that we are implementing in employees engagement by telling the story of the monetary value and also of the no monetary value. So that's the intangible. But telling the story, that's not the last step. We need also to use some optimization using the black box thinking. So the black box thinking, Debbie, so in the aviation industry, we have the NH airplane, two black box, one for the recording of the flight data, the other one for recording the communication in the cockpit. Same concept we can use also in our program by recording all the data from level one, from reaction, from learning, from application, from the business impact. It helps us to make our program better in future and to show the value of our program. Those adjustments can help to reduce the cost and also to increase the outcome and the benefit of those programs. So those are different steps that help us to show not only the business impact, but also the ROI, return on investment of the employees engagement program.
Wow, very comprehensive. And with that, it stimulates a question that I would like to ask Debbie on. What do you think the role of business leaders is to help and to contribute from the talent side, to complement the talent work, to increase employee engagement, happiness, well-being?
I mean, I think in a nutshell, their role has become even more critical today than ever before. I think leaders are not only expected to deliver the performance of their teams, deliver their KPIs, manage the political landscape with which they're working, but now they're expected to, be compassionate, show empathy, care, be more humanistic as a leader. I mean, the list goes on, doesn't it? And we read so many things now by many of the consulting firms around how to be, a compassionate leader, how to show empathy as a leader. But that's not innate in every leader, right? So sometimes we have to invest more with leaders that don't naturally show those abilities. And I think it's on L&D to support those leaders in our organizations to be the best version of themselves so they can be in service of their teams in the best possible way. So the things we're doing to link it to engagement in our organization are, we use a very well-known, I won't plug it here, but a very well-known organization for our engagement survey on an annual basis, and we have for many years. And what we know is the leaders that invest in themselves and attend development programs such as coaching skills or managing the performance of my team and other suites of management development products, we see year-on-year increase in their team's engagement results. So we're seeing a direct correlation to the leaders that attend those programs versus the leaders that don't. And so what we know from that data is the more that we can encourage our leaders to attend development programs, the more the correlation relates back to engagement and ultimately happiness of our people, or engagement, however we describe that term. And I think it is about having the leader at that fundamental level, understanding themselves before they can understand others. And some of the things we're doing in our organisation, which I'm sure many of us are, is focusing on succession. I know Joe talked about that earlier, and it's a big focus for us, particularly women, and succeeding critical roles in our organisation. And we recently partnered with an executive education firm in the region, whereby we had a leadership simulation. So the leaders that were on this succession pipeline, future leaders, were asked to attend a program, and they're running a company. So they're all equal peers, they're board directors. So it's about how do we put them in that future state and push them into a stretch and stress, in the nicest sense, a stress situation that causes the learning, but also evokes a level of arousal in their chemistry. And what I mean by that is there's something happening in the system that's causing them to behave in a certain way. So we put them in highly stressful situations, and we've used heart rate variation monitors on the participants to use data to show them in what situations are you seeing a spike in your stress levels. And what happens then in terms of your recovery, and how quick do you recover from certain situations? And they're business situations. They might be dealing with an irate stakeholder, managing an employee that's crying and that's upset about performance rating. So they're real situations. And what we discovered through this simulation with our leaders was leaders recognizing the situations that are causing the stress, firstly, and strategies to deal with that. So it's about taking care of myself, understanding which situations I need to respond differently in so that I don't emote any stress. Secondly, the data was giving them evidence that their recovery in some situations was longer than it should be typically. And what that meant for some of our leaders, I remember one leader afterwards said to me, you know, Debbie, this program has actually changed my life quite literally, because not only has it helped me think about how my own well-being impacts others, it's made me make some significant changes in my own lifestyle, more sleep, more exercise. And so, you know, a byproduct of us investing in a corporate leadership development program has meant that we have a leader in our organization that's completely changed their life, is healthier and happier, and ultimately they'll be contributing in a different way. And the well-being of our people and the teams that they lead, we would hope, is going to be significantly impacted on a positive scale as well. So I think these types of, you know, programs where we can use data, but also help leaders reflect on themselves and think about how they can be in best service of others, is really something that we're going to continue to do and focus on. And maybe not just our succession pipeline, but the intent is for all of our leaders to have this experience.
That's great. And I totally believe that in order to infuse well-being, leaders need to lead by example. And just be proud of being, you know, or champion such interventions. I really like this question. So I'd like to ask a question for Joe and then for you, Nader. So what is your insights on this, Joe?
Yeah, look, I think Debbie has absolutely hit the nail on the head, to be perfectly honest. So I'll just add 2 cents from a kind of I would say, to be available and to be accessible within the organization. And that's how our C-suite leaders and other senior people in the organization can actually add to the knowledge, learning, and well-being of other people. And I've worked for or known organizations where the C-suite are rarely seen, and they don't seem to be accessible. They might only be seen at a town hall or a big corporate event, and it doesn't have to be that informal or that complex. I would say as L&D leaders, as HR professionals and talent management people, our job is to bridge that gap to make sure that our people, our employees, hear from the leadership team more often. And I'm beside one right now. Like, go and buy a podcast mic, right? It's extremely cheap technology on Amazon, anywhere. Sit in front of these people yourself, be unafraid as an L&D person, and go record a conversation with the CEO or the COO, ask them where they started, what, you know, advice they have for the business, and then conversely, talk to your graduates, talk to your new joiners, host a podcast. Our internal peer-to-peer content over the organizations I've worked for many years has actually been more popular than the premium content providers that we've partnered with, because they're real people, they're real stories. Our employees want to hear how our leaders reached to the level of success that they did. and also makes them more human. It makes them more attached to the business that they're working for, are more proud to work for that as well. And with the right tech, you don't have to take out a huge amount of time to listen to a 10-15-minute podcast. Through your LXP, it can be accessible on your phone, in your car, as you're sitting in traffic. And I believe that's helped me and the teams that I've worked for and built over the years to just make learning, communication, and engagement a more normal human experience.
And that's, I think, where it really maximizes belonging, if you may.
Absolutely.
Mr. Nader.
Yeah, so I would like to add what Joe and Debbie were saying. So, I mean, in my opinion, leaders should help to create a culture of wellness within the organization by taking some decision, for example, providing employees with some gym membership or some healthy food option. So making sure here that they care about the employees. Not only, I mean, they see employees as a vehicle for the productivity or as a tools, but here we talk about employees as human. So getting closer to their employees and making sure that they take care and they create that culture of wellness. And you can see it in many organizations, for example, even in training, for example, the catering, the L&D and the management, they have the culture to have the healthy food option. So that kind of low carb and all this stuff. So that kind of culture within the organization that is created by the top management, by the executive, because they decided, for example, I know an organization, I mean, each employee is per year, they have a membership free of charge, not discounted. I mean, in order to encourage them to exercise, in order to encourage them, also those who have, gain weight, to reduce their weight, to have a real culture of well-being within the organization. So that's one of the important tasks for this executive. The second one is to provide some benefit here for the employees in order to engage them, and also it's related to some decision that should be taking, like Debbie, for this mic, or for any benefit that the employees needs in their work, so they can provide them, and also to encourage to promote the work-life balance. So by deciding to the possibility for the employees to work remotely for a certain number of days, this flexible work schedule, of course, so those decisions should be taken from the senior management, and in order to also to encourage their workforce to have this balance, because some of the employees, for example, they don't want to take some day off, or they want the annual leave. So here the management should encourage them, not only because of the budget, but also for the well-being of the employees. So the leaders should, take some decision here in order to create this culture of wellness, to encourage the work-life balance, to provide some benefit. And also a very important point. So I've noticed many organizations, they have this importance of the mental well-being and the mental health care for the organization. A few years ago, when we talk about providing some employees with a mental health care, so that was like a negative perception that these employees, have some problem, maybe we're not going to renew their contract and so on. But during the last few years, many organizations that they have implemented and they have supported the mental health, and they provide their employees for the awareness session, some workshop, some webinars from different experts talking about the importance of the mental health care. So it's like any part of the body, we can have pain, we can have some problem. Also, we need to take care about our brain, our all this stress that we have in the workplace. So those are, the role of the leaders who should take this initiative and help to create that kind of culture that create a safe environment and engaging environment for the workforce.
Excellent. Very rich information, insightful. Thankful for sharing your personal experience. It definitely will be helpful for the audience and for everyone who's going to be watching this session. Thank you again, and I wish you a pleasant day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.